Today's presentation is on living off dividends. This is probably one of the most exciting presentations that I've given here at Nanalyze, and it really blew my mind. So if you've ever wondered how Warren Buffett managed to become one of the most wealthy people on this planet, then this presentation is going to help explain why. So we get a lot of questions from paying subscribers or readers, and some of the more frequent I've listed here. So there's the I have $500 or $1,000. Where do I put it? These are people that are trying to find a lottery ticket. Then you have the what can I get for $30,000 or $50,000? And the more reasonable question would be, what can I expect if I invest $1,000 or $5,000 a month for 15 or 16 years, whatever numbers? And then the other would be another lump sum question. What if I put $1 million in a dividend growth portfolio? So we're going to answer all these questions today. And what we're going to do is start with our dividend growth strategy called Quantigens. And this is a freely available calculator that anybody can access. This uses old data. So we license our data directly from NASDAQ, and we pay a decent amount of money for that. So eventually this will go behind a paywall for paying subscribers only. But for now, you can go out there and access this calculator at Quantigens.com and take a look at what we call Q scores. And these are based on 7 factors. You can see these here. So all I've done here is taken the top 10 stocks by Q score to try to figure out what's a yield, a reasonable yield that we can consider when we start thinking about how much money we can make for dividend growth. So what yield to expect? Well, in our own portfolio, which contains 30 dividend growth stocks, our yield sits at around 3%. Now, that's not yield on cost. That's just our yield based on the money that the portfolio contains today. Our universe average, and we have about 74 stocks in our universe. These are companies that have paid and increased dividends for 25 years or more. We also screen by market cap. The average there is 2.3%, so we're above average. Now, what you need to remember about yield is high yields don't always mean good. And the example I've given here would be VFC's very high yield right now. We did a presentation, a YouTube video on this, talking about some of the problems that VFC might encounter. And in that presentation, we also looked at why J&J's yield never goes above, let's say, 4%. You'll hear a lot of investors say, well, I don't want to buy J&J. The yield's just not high enough. Well, the yield never gets high enough because it's a quality company. So let's get back to calculating our yield number. What I've done here is I've taken the top 10 stocks by Q score on the left here in this table. The average yield is 2.8%. So I decided to give that a minor tweak. You can see that Nordson in that stock in there is yielding about 1.1%. Well, if we replace that with a high yield stock like WP Carey, and I've done that in the table on the right, we can boost our yield to 3.2%. You can see that this is quite diversified. Now we hold 30 stocks. You could hold 10, 20, 30, whatever number you want to hold. But I wanted to keep things simple and say, well, if we held these 10 quality companies and we had a yield of 3.2%, what does that look like for income? So very simple. Here's $10,000. The annual income is $319. That's about $26 a month. There's not much that you can do with that. You go to $50,000. Well, when you get to about $375,000, things start to become interesting. $1,000 a month is a decent amount of income that you can do different things with. When you get to $1 million, now you're talking $2,600 is a decent amount of money to supplement your Social Security if you live in the States, but it's a decent amount of money. And what you need to consider is that it's not fixed. This is a dividend growth strategy. It grows. So our dividend has grown for 30 stocks in our portfolio on average 8% every year over the past decade. We do the math on that, and we will. That's quite remarkable. Now, before you start allocating money to a dividend growth investing strategy, start at a more holistic level and look at your total assets that you're managing. And these are the assets we manage. You can see that Quantigens commands the majority of our assets, followed by our Nanalyze Tech stock portfolio. Then we have European funds, Asia funds. We've done videos on all this stuff. Cash. Alternative assets are quite fun. We like wine, art, a little bit of Bitcoin there, and some gold. So put together a spreadsheet and start thinking about your assets at a more holistic level. And then when you've decided what you want to do, how much money you want to allocate into dividend growth, then you can start to decide, well, on a fixed amount per month, how much do I want to save? And what you can do is what's called a dividend reinvesting plan. And all brokerage firms now should allow you to do this. You can set a little checkbox, and every time you receive a dividend, the brokerage firm immediately buys shares of the company with it. And some companies actually give you a discount when you do this. We took advantage of this for a number of firms as we were building our dividend growth portfolio over more than a decade now. And the compounding effect is going to be a very pleasant surprise. And we did the numbers, and I was just really blown away by this. And now I understand why our strategy has done so well, frankly. The longer you save, the luckier you get. And I think anybody of any age can take advantage of this. So I put together this drip spreadsheet here, and there's 3 fields in the top you'll want to look at. There's the amount of money you're saving per month, portfolio yield, remember we calculated that 3.2%, and the monthly income at year 15. So I did this spreadsheet for 15 years. You could take it out longer if you wanted, but this seemed to be good enough to show just how effective this strategy is. In the table there you see I've broken down each quarter, Q1, Q2, Q3, etc., and each year. Now, when you look at this table, let's go to year 1, Q1. You see how there's the 4 payments, right? We made $1,635 a month. We did that 4 times. Fine. Q2, you notice how there's 4 more payments and there's $39. That represents the dividend income for the previous quarter because you need some time for that to register. That's simply calculated all the way across all 15 years. And what you find is that it dramatically increases, that dividend reinvesting dramatically increases the money that you have at the end. So if you invest $1,635 a month for 15 years, you'll have a monthly income on year 15 of $1,000. That's a decent amount of money. But astute readers will notice one thing here. We haven't taken into account the fact that dividends grow. Dividend growth is extremely powerful. This is an example we used in our recent J&J presentation, and this simply calculates income growing at, I think it's 8.2% over a number of years. So the table on the left at year 10, income growing at, I believe it's 8.1%, you'd have more than double the income at year 10. While in year 30, you'd have 10 times the income based on this growth. However, if you had fixed income and it wasn't growing, in 30 years, you'd actually have half of the income because it loses its purchasing power to inflation. That's why this strategy is so powerful. So let's plug in the dividend growth to that previous spreadsheet we were using, same amount of money, $1,635 a month over 15 years, except the dividend is growing at 8% per year per our historical record. So that's reasonable to consider that you can do that. And now your monthly income at year 15 jumps from $1,000 a month to $1,300 a month. What's even more cool is if you start saving a lot more money. So if you're somebody making 6 figures or more and you're able to manage your expenses and taxes appropriately, then you might be able to save $5,000 a year. And if you are doing that by year 15, so if you're 30 years old, by the time you're 45, you'd have $4,000 in monthly income coming in. That should be a reasonable amount of money to live on, and I wanted to touch a little bit on my own experiences using the strategy, so I developed it 15 years ago and started investing. Similar to this spreadsheet. 5 years ago, I revised the strategy along with our head of research, and we made minor tweaks to this portfolio based on the strategy. One of the great things about our strategy is it just doesn't change that much over time. So we just released a new version of this report, and the tweaks were so minor that it wasn't even really worth mentioning. I think the only major thing that happened is AT&T lost their dividend champion status, so we kicked them out and replaced them with another firm. So I stopped investing into this strategy 5 years ago and started living off the income. And a couple of things I noticed. First of all, that the quality of my life gets better as time goes on. So my income increases every year. I love that. I don't want my quality of life decreasing. And also, geographical arbitrage has made for quite the interesting life. So people sometimes comment and say, well, you travel a lot. Well, indeed I do, because I have a couple of what I like to call shelf dreams. These are big, bold goals that you set for yourself that you'll accomplish over decades more so than years. So one of my goals was to complete a full marathon on all 7 continents, including Antarctica, and I completed that. Then I'm moving on to my next goal, which is to travel to all of the 197 countries in the world, and I'm 65% of the way through that goal. So I've been traveling now for 5 years, using my dividend income, and it isn't as expensive as it sounds. So, for example, this latest leg, I'm in southern Africa and traveling now for about 3 months. If you're paying a $1,500 a month rental payment in the U.S., if you're lucky enough to find something that cheap, that's about $50 a night. Well, I've been to 6 countries so far, and I haven't paid more than $50 a night, except for the hotel I'm in right now to do some presentations where the bandwidth is a little bit better than you might find is in typical local hotels. But what helps, of course, is how you spend your money. I don't pay utilities. I don't have a car payment. There's no subscriptions, I think, except Spotify. I don't buy Starbucks. I pay for global insurance and a couple permanent phone numbers. What I found is quite nice would be that some of these firms that we're invested in have spin-offs. So, example, VFC, APD, J&J is having their Kenvue spin-off soon. And these spin-offs provide a nice little cash bonus if you're living off your income. And what's even more interesting is that we ran our performance numbers and we did very well this year. I think we lost 7% compared to the NASDAQ, losing somewhere around, let's say, 25 or 30%. But we didn't even include our income or the spin-offs in that calculation. So I think we might have actually netted positive on our assets under management. But what I fail to realize sometimes is that I'm living off of that income, and it's also being plowed back into Nanalyze to invest in our business. So the other thing that's been happening is that occasionally we'll trim overweight positions. This has happened with the oil companies, Chevron and Exxon. The optimal weighting in our portfolio would be 3.3%, 1 divided by 30 positions. So if something goes beyond 3.33%, let's say to 4.5%, we'll start to trim, and that cash that we trim is just another bonus that usually goes into airfares or my business. So if you want the spreadsheet that we've used for this presentation, send an email to info@nanalyze.com. If you want to run some of your own calculations, living on dividends is very powerful concept, and the best thing that you can do is take that spreadsheet, see how I put it together, build your own spreadsheets, put your life in a spreadsheet. It's very effective. If you're paying us money, that means you're a paying subscriber, drop us an email, info@nanalyze.com. We'll fire you that spreadsheet and answer any questions that you might have. So just to conclude, have realistic expectations about what to expect. So this save and drip strategy that we've described today, that can work at any age. So we had somebody email and say, I'm 45 years old. I'm going to retire at 65. I've got 20 years left. I've got a decent amount of money I'm saving every month. What would that look like if I plowed it into a dividend growth strategy? Well, take the spreadsheet and figure that out and do it for yourself and watch as it happens. It's very exciting. And of course, it takes time, as anything does, but the longer that you save, the luckier that you're going to get. And then ideally, you can use, this is a very global world now, and you can use geographical arbitrage to maximize the way that you're spending that income. So I went ahead and put up a video here for people. It's titled How to Make Money. It's quite interesting because you'll probably need to make money to maximize the effectiveness of this strategy. Please subscribe to our channel, help support us. Thanks for taking the time to watch this today.